future.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Rolando Villalobos. I'm Assistant Director of the International Center. I have my colleagues here today. Priya. Priya's right there. Priya helps us with tons of things. She's also helps with managing our building, the Bechtel International Center. There's a little slide that she has in the back, a partial slide of that. You will eventually meet us there and see us there. And next I see Valerie. Valerie Todd is International Student Advisor, extremely knowledgeable with all sorts of issues relating your legal status for both F and J visa holders. And Sean is normally our gatekeeper. In other words, he is in the second floor lobby of the Bechtel International Center and deals with hundreds of questions daily. He's extremely familiar with the type of questions you will have. We are all what's called designated school officials, DSOs. We have signature authorities, that's what that means, over your documents, your legal documents. And I'm curious to see, I'm assuming, how many do we have students? We have 20-something students, Sean?
We have 25.
Of the 25 students, I'm assuming maybe one or two of you might be a J1 visa holder. If you are a J1 visa holder, could you put that in the chat just so that we know that we have J1 visa holders? Because if we don't, I won't talk about J1 visa issues. The bulk of students use the document called the I-20 for F1 student status to obtain the visa in the passport, and then use the visa stamp in the passport to enter the US with a valid passport and an I-20, okay? So this meeting will focus on the issues on how to maintain status. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk through about 34 slides. I might not go into tremendous detail in each slide, but I'll cover enough to hit the important points. And then at the end, we'll leave plenty of time for you to ask us questions, okay? Any question is game. And so let's move along here. Our agenda pretty much covers the general introduction, a little bit on the legal status side of things, talk about your immigration documents, and then there's something called duration of status. Both F and J visa holders are admitted for this duration of status period of time. And I'll show you a slide in a little bit about the time frame what that includes. We're definitely going to talk about travel and reentry to the US, and then just a few issues about settling in at Stanford, okay? This slide here is on our website. It talks about this session itself. You can find this PowerPoint, and this is being recorded anyway, so you'll be able to go through it later if I spoke too quickly or if you missed something that you wanted to go back and listen to. You can just go to our website, and we have a section there on coming to Stanford that you can check out more information. So every year we have lots and lots of students from many countries, over 124 countries. Stanford accepts over 1,000 new students, and past year has been exceptionally difficult, unlike any we have ever seen. And we had quite a few students, some of you who were anticipating coming in fall, but couldn't for whatever reason, maybe not able to get the visa or so on and so forth, or whatever delays happened, and you're now coming for winter quarter. And so we probably have several hundreds. I don't know how many of you are coming, but I know it'll be several hundred of you who will be coming for this quarter, winter quarter. And so once the dust settles down at Stanford and the pandemic in general, you can easily participate live in one of the hundreds of student groups that exist at Stanford. And there's definitely over 45 that are focused on international students, have that theme. So they're very welcoming, and then, but just be aware that they exist, okay? Let's see. Your legal status, ultimately, to be blunt, is your business. But we're here to sort of help you, guide you through the maze of things. But it's your responsibility to maintain your legal status. And we'll chat a little bit more about that, on how to do that in 2 slides. I'll tell you more about that. I just want to let you know that our building, the Bechtel International Center, it's technically physically closed. We're all, 22 of us are working from home, okay? But you can always get a hold of us. The email to get a hold of us is internationalstudents@stanford.edu. Whenever you reach out to any one of us or international students, stanford.edu, always please mention your CVIS ID number, That's the number on your I-20, okay? That's on the top left-hand side of your I-20. And also, please include your student ID number. It probably it starts with either 006 or 06. It probably won't start with 05 unless it's an older number and coming back from another degree or something. But anyway, we have many meetings and Zoom appointments and Zoom meetings that we have advising in person. These timeframes fluctuate, so go check out our website when these timeframes are. We have group advisings typically on Friday. Today we're doing this instead of the general group advising. This advising for today focuses on orientation. And then always, I know you've checked out our website already. And if you like us in Facebook, we're gonna like you back. So we'll continue here. We'd love to see you physically one of these days, but give it time, we're gonna get a chance to meet. So how do you maintain status? Well, make sure your passport's valid always while you're in the US. If you're about to enter the US this weekend, technically your passport should be valid for at least 6 months into the future, unless your country has a passport agreement with our country that lets you enter even though the passport isn't valid for 6 months, but it's still valid. Once you enter the country, you're expected to enroll in full course of study. So undergrads, that's 12 units. Graduate students, that's 8 units, okay? And any changes that happen while you're here, if you're changing degree levels, you got to request a new I-20 so we can do an I-20 from undergrad to master's, let's say. Be careful about working. Be very careful, because if you worked without a work permit off campus, you're violating your legal status. And that's, as I tell my German friends, nicht gut. So avoid that type of problem. Always ask us. I joke about this. I always tell students, don't ask your friends. Your friends don't know these issues well the way we do. That's our job. We're here to advise you. So always ask us about any employment scenario. And of course, I want you to review our website first. We have very, very detailed information on our website about on and off-campus employment. And we'll chat a little bit more, definitely near the end. I'll take any questions relating employment. An extension, the filing for a timing extension. Now I'm only talking really to PhD students. Undergrads, you're gonna finish your degree in 4 years. Master's students, you're gonna finish your master's in 1 or 2 years, depending on the number of units you need to take, but you will finish in time. PhD students, you guys, I don't know when you're gonna finish, but you will. So just be aware that if for some reason you can't finish your degree by the length of time that is shown on page 1 of your I-20, my office can do an extension at your request, after you've verified proof of funding sources and your advisor has explained why you need an extension. A note about J visa holders, by the way, I don't know, Sean or Valerie, do we have any J students on? Anybody that said their J status?
No one's said in chat yet.
Okay, well, if I have a J1 student out there, I'll just mention quickly that you have to maintain your insurance. It's actually written in the Code of Federal Regulations that if you fail to maintain insurance as a J1 student, you violate your legal status. F1 students, you are required to have F1 insurance, not because of the Code of Federal Regulation, but because Stanford University tells you you need to have insurance. It's very, very expensive to get sick in the United States, by the way. A few years back, I had an emergency appendectomy. I believe that cost $57,000. I was in the hospital overnight, 1 day, okay? And I didn't have a view to the Golden Gate Bridge from the hospital in San Francisco. So the most expensive hotel in San Francisco doesn't cost you $57,000, but my operation did. So I'm giving you a friendly warning, be insured, okay? Stanford insurance is fantastic. It'll cover your illnesses, all right? Let's see. Reporting changes. This itemizes some of the changes. It's unlikely you're going to change your name, might change citizenship, but anything like that, you need to talk to us about what's going on. The address change, you go into Access. That's the school's database. You should already know that. Within 10 days. So if you're flying in this Saturday and staying in a hotel, and then on Monday you move into an apartment, you're technically supposed to tell us that you're living in a hotel room within 10 days of entering. And then you're all supposed to tell us, once you move to your new address, if it's a week or whatever later, you're also supposed to inform us. And you do that by going into Access and updating the change of address. The database access speaks to the SEVIS database. SEVIS is Student Exchange Visitor Information System. They talk to each other all the time. So it's very important that you do these changes or these updates when you're supposed to. Major, if you're an undergrad and you change from, and you go co-term where you're adding the masters, eventually you're going to have to request an I-20 to reflect the masters. You have to request the I-20 for the higher degree before you graduate, okay? If for some reason you change your graduation date, we will know that. But any changes, if you want to transfer out, things like that, definitely you're going to be dealing with our office and an advisor on changes like that. If anything happens where you lose your I-20 or DS 2019, if you're a J1 student, we'll replace it for you. That's not a problem. Okay. All right. Let's see. So earlier I mentioned that graduate students need to have 8 units to maintain full-time enrollment. Undergrads, 12 units. If you're a GSB student, you're going to be enrolled in a heck of a lot more than 8 units. I don't know how many you're enrolled. I want to say 18. I don't know, some god-awful number. But anyway, undergrads, 12-unit minimum. If you drop 1 unit below full-time, Access will tell SEVIS, and SEVIS will send us a nasty message about you. And I joke about this, but I'm also very serious. The message you would think was written by Arnold Schwarzenegger because it says terminate student. I'm not kidding you. That's exactly what it says. So after the add drop deadline, if you drop a class without asking us, you will violate your legal status. So don't do that, okay? Always talk to us prior to you hitting the button that says drop below. There's actually a warning that says if you do this, you're going to violate your status. So you need to talk to us, okay? Always talk to us, especially if it's after the add drop deadline. You must talk to an advisor, okay? Meaning an advisor at the Bechtel International Center, not your advisor from your department, but definitely you want to talk to them, but you want to talk to us because we help you in maintaining your status, okay? There are exceptions to full-time enrollment. The final quarter that you're here or a medical reason, that's not a problem. So just be careful about maintaining your enrollment, okay? What else? Let's see. We had an update. We have a video on maintaining status on our website, and there's information about coming to Stanford 2021 quarter, and you're obviously expected to enroll in a hybrid type class, and actually winter and spring. Valerie, I don't know if you want to add anything on there. You're muted right now, but essentially.
Sure. Yeah, just to remind students that if you have an I-20, which most of you probably do since you're at this session, you have an I-20 with a start date of winter quarter, so January 2021. If that's the case, then that means you have to have at least 1 hybrid course this quarter and at least 1 hybrid course in the spring. Well, actually, at least 1 hybrid course until further notice, until regulations change.
Yeah, and we're waiting for guidance. It's sort of frustrating because they don't tell us months and months and months in advance. They almost tell us, it's very frustrating because we can't guide you. So we have to be conservative. We will always be conservative when we advise you, by the way, so that you maintain your status without any problem. Employment's always a hot topic. In other words, it's a topic that you guys are always very curious about. On-campus employment for F1 students, it's pretty straightforward. You're able to work on campus up to 20 hours a week during the academic year, maximum. You cannot work 21 hours a week, only 20 hours a week. I know on the slide here it says 40 hours a week during vacation. Generally speaking, undergrad rules limit your full-time enrollment. But immigration rules say that you can work more than 20 hours a week. Anything over 20 hours a week is considered full-time from the immigration perspective. And Stanford has their own limits. Um, undergrads, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, but undergrads have a different rule, right, Valerie, regarding the number of hours uh, that they may work during the quarter. And
So Stanford has some rules itself. So not only do you have to obey immigration rules, you have to obey Stanford rules. So
yeah,
immigration says you can't work more than 20 hours, but Stanford might also have its own rules. So we recommend you look into those and talk to your advisor about it as well.
yeah, frequently Stanford won't like you working if you're getting, because your focus is not working. Your focus is studying. Okay. So during the academic year, that's your focus. That's what you should be doing. Summer, it's a different story. Summer, you're going to be able to work, which brings me to my next topic, curricular practical training. 99.999% of you will work through CPT. It's a permit that's issued by our office at the Bechtel International Center in 2 to 3 weeks time. So if you're going to think of working in the summer in June or July, um, you can apply for the work permit in March or April, okay? So you have plenty of time to sort that out. We can talk a little bit more about that later. The, the other permit that exists is called optional practical training. You could actually do optional practical training prior to graduation, but it's so difficult to get from the perspective of the timing of it. It's time consuming to get OPT. Most, when I say most, 99.9999% of you will use OPT after you graduate, okay? And that permit will take 3 to 4 months easily to obtain. So none of you will really be applying for OPT for summer employment if you're continuing in the fall. You're going to apply for curricular training because most likely your department offers some sort of practicum internship class, and it has to be taken within your own department. Okay, so if you haven't declared your major, I can't issue you the work authorization because I don't know your field of studies. And so if you haven't declared your major by the third quarter, there's no way you're going to be able to work in the summer because the law requires us to issue you a work permit that is in relation to your field of studies. And right now, if you're an undergrad, your field of studies says general on it, which means you haven't declared a major. If you're a grad student, your I-20 does have the major already there. It'll say, you know, chemistry or bioengineering, whatever it'll say. So, you know, you'll be fine. Most students, over 90%, I would say, no, higher than that, cannot do curricular training their first year, their first 3 quarters, because it's not a requirement of your degree. Very, very rarely, there are some departments that do allow for it. The Graduate School of Business is one. The School of Education, specifically the STEP program, Teachers Education Program, which I'm not sure we have any students from that program here this year, uh, do permit the student to work during the academic year only because it's a requirement in order to graduate, okay? But like I said, the bulk of you will work through CPT off-campus employment in the summer. I'm not going to go into J's because I believe Valerie or someone told me that there are no J's, so I'm not going to talk about that, so I can just move along here. Um, in the CVIS Access, I'm sorry, there's different addresses. You have the mailing address, the billing address, CVIS US. The CVIS US address is the very, very important address that we want to make sure you have one in there because that's the address. It's probably pre-populated, by the way, with your dorm address in there. But you got to go and make sure that it's correct, okay? And it's the address where you physically sleep at night. You cannot be writing a post office box, or you got to give me the actual address, street address. And the address always starts with a number, by the way, the street address, okay? And so you select the CVIS US address. Also remember to, not as important from the immigration perspective, but important from the school's perspective, this mail address, the mailing address, that's important also for you to update because if Stanford sent you a letter, or let's say a rebate, something, a rebate, or God knows what they send you, they'll send it to that address physically. They'll mail it to you to that address. But the CVIS US address is super important. That's what I want to make sure that you understand, okay? Because that's the one that we communicate with the CVIS database about your uh, where you live and how, and the fact that you're maintaining status. Whenever you change that address, within 10 days of changing that address, you need to update that information again in Access, okay? All right. Your documents, let's talk about the documents. Keep your documents safe. Um, and of course, your important documents include the valid passport. If you're an F1 student, you have an I-20. If you're a J1, you have a DS-2019. We are suggesting to you to print out a copy of your I-94 arrival record. Uh, if you type in a Google search CBP and I-94, it'll pull up that link that's right there. And then you can check that your entry was done as F1DS for duration of status. If they entered you as a tourist, B1 or B2, not good. That's a mistake. If you did not show your I-20 upon entry to the US and they let you enter on a tourist visa, you messed up. Don't do that. Obviously, you're not going to do that, but you're going to show your I-20, your passport. In the case of, except the Canadians, in your passport, there's a visa stamp that all of you must have a valid visa stamp in order to enter the country, except Canada. Now, Trump could still make life difficult for you. He's got 11, 12 more days or whatever left. He could demand that Canadians get stamps later, but I don't think it's going to happen. He's got bigger worries right now. So just make sure your documents are in order. Keep them safe, secure, keep them dry, okay? And make photocopies of your documents eventually. It'd be nice. And whatever, and if you make copies, digital copies, encrypt it. Keep everything safe, okay? And so just be cautious with your documentation. Don't forget your passport or your documentation on the photocopying machine. I've actually have had students tell me, I left it at the photocopying machine and I lost it. Well, okay, I know it sounds silly, but it happens. Let's move on. Your I-20 looks something like this. It has a start date, the different, it mentions the education level. It has a start date and an end date of classes. Undergrads, your I-20s were issued for 4 years. Master students, most of you were 2 years, unless you have a very specific program like the GSB, MSX program. They're done for 12 months. PhD students, yours are actually issued for a long time, 7 years, okay? Now, don't confuse getting an I-20 that lasts 7 years as a PhD student, and you go and look at your passport and say, hey, they only gave me a visa for 5 years. I'm from China, they only gave it for 5 years. Well, that's because it's reciprocal. If I was to go study in your country, I would get a visa for 5 years, okay? And so don't worry, you can remain in the country with an expired visa. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but don't confuse this end date with the end date on your visa stamp page, okay? This is the date. This should never expire. This end date should never expire if you're still studying at Stanford, okay? So my warning is to PhD students. If you can't finish your PhD within the time frame on that I-20, then months or even a year or so before, you can ask us for an extension. That's not a problem. We'll give you an extension. It'll take us 2 to 3 weeks at the most, and to help you maintain status, all right? Since I don't have J's, I'm not going to talk about J's. Real quickly here, I took the liberty of putting you know who. If you don't know who that is, come on, you do know who that is. That is Junior. And in this example here, I put entries. It says M. M stands for multiple entries. The bulk of you, 99% of you, will have in your passport, it'll say M on it. So that means you can enter multiple times up to the expiration date that's here. If you're from China, high probability that they gave you, let's say you're doing a master's, a 2-year master's, high probability they gave you a visa stamp page that will end in 5 years, okay? If you're from Brazil and Mexico, I believe it'll only be issued for 4 years. But it varies. Like I said, it's reciprocal. Your country's nice to me, I'm nice to you. And that's the relationship that we have, okay? In your passport, they should have stamped upon entry this little oval blue stamp with a notation F1D/S, duration of status. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. This duration of status is very important. If they stamped B1 or B2, those are tourist visas. B1 is a tourist for business, and B2 is a tourist for pleasure. If they did that, that's a big mistake. It's not your mistake if you showed them your I-20 and passport. The officer, because they deal mostly with tourists, they accidentally put B1 or B2. That needs to get corrected. What's super important is that you go and look at your electronic record, the I-94 record, and make sure it says class of admissions F1 and admitted until duration of status, okay? This is super important because if this was entered B1 or B2, that's a mistake, okay? And like I said, if you showed them your I-20, then it's not the mistake you did, it's a mistake the admitting officer did. And it can be corrected, don't worry, it can be corrected. You didn't violate your status, you just, your record's screwed up. But it'll get straightened out later, all right? Let's see. Let's see. F1s. Sometimes you'll see these. This is another example of the stamp. The duration of status time frame. This is for F1 students. So this right here, start date is what? January 11th. Degree conferral? Well, it's probably a June date or possibly a January date. It just depends on the end date of your I-20. This date revolves around the date of conferral of your degree. All right. So undergrads, you probably will have from here to here will be 4 years. If you did nothing but graduate from Stanford, you'd get this 60-day grace period. Okay. But most of you stay here for this third period of time, this optional practical training, these 12 months. You apply for these 12 months, 90 days before you graduate. You're applying for this work permit under OPT. This permit will take 3 to 4 months easily to arrive. Okay. And then after this permit expires, you can remain in the country another 60 days. So from here to here, this end of the 60th day, this is all duration of status. All right. If you're in a STEM field, you see these 12 months, you'll get an additional 24 months added to these 12 months. If you work for a company that does what's called E-Verify. Don't worry about it right now, but I'm just saying in general, this is what duration of status is when we talk about it for F1 students. Let's switch quickly into travel and reentry. Domestic travel, if you travel domestically, always travel with your passport and your I-20 and do a print of your print off of your electronic I-94 record. Travel with these documents. Do not, eventually, if you get a California driver's license, don't just simply board the airplane with a driver's license. You could be detained if you traveled within the U.S. without your passport. You will be detained, okay? And technically,
Students should also, oh, sorry.
Yeah, he could be fined and deported, yeah.
And students should also print out their I-20, which we probably send to them electronically and also sign it as well.
Right. Yeah, thank you for saying that. We told you to print out your I-20 and sign it and date it on page 1. So if there's any of you that haven't entered the country yet but are about to enter this weekend, print out your I-20 because the immigration official doesn't want to see your PDF on your phone or your laptop. They can't touch your phone or laptop. They were told not to. And so you can't just simply say, hey, look, here's a copy, a PDF file of my I-20, let me in. Doesn't work like that. You need to print out your I-20. When you print that I-20, sign it and date it on page 1, okay? Definitely read the information on page 3 that says that you will abide by all those restrictions or information that's mentioned on that document. International travel, it's pretty much almost identical, really identical to domestic travel, but you travel with a valid passport, a valid I-20, a visa stamp that's valid in the passport. Unless you're Canadian, you don't need a visa stamp, but you do need your I-20 to be signed. High probability that your I-20s have all been signed. When I say high probability, 99.9% sure that if you look at page 2 of your I-20, it's been signed for travel. And that signature, there's like 5 signature spots. And one of my colleagues would have signed your document, okay, on there. This signature is good for 12 months, all right? After you graduate, that signature is only good for 6 months, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So again, always make sure that you review your documentation before you travel and re-enter the United States. You shouldn't have any difficulty entering the country if you have the documents that we just chatted about, okay? The next question here is, what if I have to renew your visa? Well, you can only renew the visa outside of the United States. You cannot renew the visa stamp and the passport in the US. The visa stamp could expire and does not violate your legal status because it's only used as a document to enter the US. You're knocking on the front door of the US saying, let me in, please, okay? And and they'll look for that visa stamp. Unless you're Canadian, you don't need it, like I said. But most of the time, your visa stamps are good for a very long time. So it's premature to worry about it. But be very careful. One warning, you see this part right here, it says beware of an alcohol-related offense that can impact future visa renewals. Alcohol drinking age in the United States is 21 years old. And so especially undergrads, if you make a mistake where you're riding your bicycle drunk, you could get arrested, by the way. And let me tell you a quick story. I had a PhD student who was riding his bicycle at night. There's a stop sign. He's going to the dorms in Escondido Village. Slows down but doesn't stop. He passes the stop sign. A policeman sees him, pulls him over, and smells alcohol on the student's breath. And the student had, I'm not kidding you, 2 beers. And depending on your weight and height and the beer content, alcohol content, if you're 0.08 or more percent, you're drunk according to California law. And so you'll get a nasty ticket, expensive ticket. But more importantly for international students, in this case of this student, that happened on a Friday. On a Monday, he emailed me saying, Rolando, I got what looks like a fictitious email saying that my visa had been revoked. It sounds like spam. And my first question to him was, did you get pulled over by a policeman drunk? And he said, yes. I said, well, that's not a joke. Your visa has been revoked. That means if you leave the country, you're going to have to request a new one, but there's going to have to be a panel of physicians that has to evaluate your request. That is time consuming, guys. So just be very cautious. I'm telling you, be cautious what you do, all right? The other thing about marijuana, I'm not sure if anybody wants to talk about. Valerie, you want to talk about the marijuana issue here regarding California versus federal law?
Sure. So in California, marijuana is technically legal, even though on Stanford campus it is not legal. But federally, marijuana is not legal as well. So it's really, I mean, it can be confusing in the US that there's federal laws versus state laws. So federally, marijuana is not legal. And since you're an international student, you are subject to federal laws. So even though marijuana might be legal in California, it's not legal for you as an international student. If you were to get caught with marijuana or get a marijuana offense, through the police, then that could also affect your visa and your visa could be revoked. So unfortunately, you have different rules than domestic students, than your friends who are, US citizens. So just be aware,
Yep.
Be very careful about alcohol related offenses and, drug marijuana related offenses.
Yeah. I mean, I had a case a few years back, undergrad, who was celebrating too much. And when she left the country to go renew a visa, getting the appointment took many, many months for the panel of physicians to evaluate her, to determine she wasn't an alcoholic or had these other problems going on. And she then decided to, because the timing of her classes would have fallen out of sequence, she took off the rest of the year and then came back fall quarter. And I mean, so it can dramatically affect you. Plus, hiring, you would have to hire 2 attorneys, by the way, to go to court. One, an immigration attorney, and the other one is what do you call it? Civil attorney, criminal law attorney. Okay, those combinations. If you found one attorney that can do both, that's a very expensive attorney, but it's still expensive to hire 2 attorneys. So what I'm telling you, this would cost you in the thousands of dollars. This type of fine by hiring attorneys and dealing with all this legal stuff. I'm not kidding you. It could easily cost you $7,000 to $10,000 to deal with something like this. So heads up, be careful. All right. Okay. So much negativity here. I don't want to sound like Trump. Okay. Just a little quick review. Always enter in F1 status. Do not enter ever on a tourist visa. So let's say that you forgot your I-20 and you're from, I don't know, Belgium, and you can enter under the visa waiver program, ESTA. If you enter as a tourist, okay, you're not coming to Stanford, you're going to Disneyland, all right? because you can't attend school on a tourist visa. All right, so that would be a huge mistake. Don't ever do that, and especially don't ever do that if you're close to graduating, because then you'll forfeit your ability to work in the United States and your ability to remain if you're in STEM field for 3 years. That would be a huge mistake. The other issue is that if you're doing a, what do you call it, a transfer, or when you go from one country to another, you step into the US, don't get off the plane, then you continue going on. If you enter on a tourist visa in that scenario, you will also screw up your F1 status. And if an immigration official says, oh, don't worry, just when you re-enter, you regain it. You got to ask for a brand new I-20, pay the SEVIS fee again, and you reset the clock for trying to qualify for off-campus employment, meaning that you have to be in status 3/4 normally in order to qualify for off-campus employment again. So be very careful about that, all right? This second point, we already talked about that. Make sure that your passport's valid for 6 months. Don't wait a week or two before. I actually spoke to a student yesterday who screwed up royally. Okay, I'm not mincing words. He messed up. His passport's expiring in a couple of days. And he's just now requesting from his embassy in the US to extend the passport. And everything's closed. You can't physically go. Everything's done through email. So this guy is in a rough situation. So if your passport's going to expire while you're in the US, don't worry. Just apply for a new one 6 months before it expires. Contact your embassy or a consulate in the US. Find out logistically how long does it take. But I would say do this many, many months before it expires, all right? Regarding travel, always plan ahead. Make sure that your travel signature is valid. Right now, the Immigration Service is letting us print out documents and send them to you electronically, which is great. Maybe eventually that policy might change, but right now, very good policy. You benefit from it. We said earlier, if your visa is expired, you can only renew it in your home country. If you, by the way, if your passport's about to expire, but the visa stamp in the passport's good for 4 years, let's say, renew your passport. And when you travel with both passports next to each other. Get a rubber band, put them next to each other. You have a new passport that doesn't have any visa stamp, but you have the old passport with a valid visa stamp. The visa stamp is still valid in the old passport, even though it's expired, okay? So anyway, let's see. Oh, this silly character, you guys should know, this is a Stanford tree. This is our mascot. Eventually, you're going to go to a football game. You're going to go to the Cal Berkeley football game, which is our biggest rivalry since ever. And you'll see that silly guy or person jumping around. Anyway, Stanford Honor Code, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you all will probably experience whenever you enroll at Stanford that they'll talk about the Stanford Honor Code. Don't mess up, please, because the Honor Code could prevent you, a violation could prevent you from enrolling. And if you don't enroll, remember how I told you Access speaks to SEVIS all the time? If you don't enroll, SEVIS says, hey, why aren't you enrolled? And that means we got to terminate you. And when we terminate you, that means you have to leave the country. So be very careful. Don't make a stupid mistake of plagiarism or unpermitted collaboration. If you don't know if what you're doing is wrong, ask the professor. They will guide you on this. They will tell you whether it's wrong or you're able to do that, you know? So there's a link here on community standards. Go read it, take your time and read it about it, okay? I don't want to go too much more into it. Just be careful with what you do, all right? Let's see. Social Security number and the ITIN, the individual taxpayer number. Valerie, do you want to chat a little bit about this? Because a lot of students always have questions or they hear that they need to have a Social Security number. They must have one, you know, to survive, but you can tell them better, right?
Sure. So Social Security numbers, SSN or ITIN, are all have to do with taxes in the US. So as an international student, no matter what, whether you're working or not, you have to file at least one tax form every year. That's just life. No one likes taxes. I don't even like to do my own taxes, but unfortunately you got to do it. So just know that for, you know, the rest of your attendance in the US, every year around March, you are going to have to file at least one tax form. Yep. If you are working in the US, you will have to have an SSN, a Social Security number, in order to get paid. So if you have an on-campus job, if you're going to be a TA or work at the bookstore, maybe this summer if you're going to do, well, you probably won't be doing CPT because you just got here, but eventually if you want to do an internship off campus and get CPT, you're gonna have to get a social security number. The issue right now with social security numbers is that the Social Security office is only taking emergency appointments. So you can only get a social security number no more than 30 days before your job starts. So if you do have a job starting soon on campus, you are going to need a social security number. You can go to the social security page of our website, and we have information on the 2 local offices and how to contact them about trying to get an emergency appointment. Once you do get an appointment, you will need a number of documents. You can find those on our website as well, the list of what documents you need. And you'll need a letter from Bechtel, and you can get that on our website as well. So once you get those documents and apply, it can take 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, unless it might have gotten a little longer due to COVID, to get the actual social security number. So I-10 is different. So like I was talking about taxes, if you're not working in the US, but you do get some kind of scholarship money from Stanford or the US government, some US entity is giving you scholarship money to attend Stanford, or you're getting financial aid from Stanford, then you're going to need an I-10, which is a number just for taxes, tax purposes. If that is the case, we do recommend getting an I-10 as soon as possible, but the same issue is that most of the offices are closed. So if you visit the I-10 page of our website, we have a list of all the different offices that you can go, because you actually have to go to an office. You can't get it through Bechtel or the Social Security office. It's a whole different office. So we have a list of those offices, and I've heard from some students that different offices are having like emergency appointments. So what we do recommend, if you are getting some kind of scholarship money and are going to need to file taxes with an I-10, to go onto our website on the I-10 page, click on the different offices, and just start calling them and seeing if they're doing emergency appointments or in-person appointments, because you will eventually need these numbers to file taxes. And like I said, it can take
for next year, right? For next year. Yep.
Yes, for next year.
I'd also like
So
to point out that if you have a January 11th start date, it's too early to apply for either letter from us right now, because we need to activate your record, your CVIS record.
Yep. Good
Either
point.
you just arrived or you're on the verge of arriving. We will not activate your CVIS record until 30 days from January 11th, if that's your program start date.
Yeah,
so
at the latest.
If you apply for your number next week from us, we will reject it, because we can only write letters for folks who have active CVIS records. It will happen naturally over time. We don't do it individually like premature activation. It's just that we ask you to be patient. Yes, you can start working at Stanford without the SSN because you're still so new in the system, but within certain guidelines regarding number of hours per week. But we cannot write the letter, and you cannot go to the Social Security Administration until after your CVIS record has been activated. And that will happen generally about 30 days after your program start date. It'll happen automatically, by the way.
Well, the law requires, same way you guys as students have obligations, we have obligations or requirements. And the law requires us to validate or activate your CVIS record no later than 30 days from the start date of your I-20. Your I-20 has a start date of January 11th. But we try to start doing these around the 3rd week of after school begins, because by then everybody would have enrolled, okay? You know, and then there's thousands of records we have to activate or validate. So, or we have to run batch processing on these request. So don't worry, it'll get done. Like my colleague said, for sure, by the 30th day from the date of your start date of your I-20, you would have been activated in the system. All right. Now let me move on, because just real quick, the driver's license. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Undergrads, you can't even have a car on campus. Eventually, if you're going to get a driver's license, read carefully this information on our website, okay? I'm not going to go into this much, but you have to wait also until after we activate your record to even try to get a driver's license, because the driver's license, their own website, goes to look whether your immigration record has been updated. So read carefully the information. You'll be fine. You know, we have tons of information. Let's move on. Taxes. eventually next year, we purchase web-based tax software that you can use for free. We also have someone come in and do presentations, a couple of presentations for federal and state taxes. Don't worry about it. Just be aware that our office will provide more information on this, okay? And then pretty much the final slide. Stanford, we feel is pretty safe, but you have to be aware of your surroundings, okay? Just if you have any questions, you know, about safety in your area, ask your resident dean, you know, attend those meetings in the dorms. Pretty much is just be aware of your surroundings. Be aware also that there's a lot of scams going on, and you're never going to be contacted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, or the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, or the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. If anybody's asking for money, hey, it's a scam, but they sound very convincing because they also scam the phone numbers from the FBI or DHS or the IRS. They'll say, oh, you recently entered the US, we let you in, but you had failed to fill out this form, and you have to submit the form and you have to give us $5,000, but we'll give you the $5,000 back if you go to the Internal Revenue Service later after you've completed this form and you've given us the money. Well, that's a scam, okay? Don't fall for it. Don't worry. If you have questions about that, contact the Stanford Police, contact, us if need be too. And there's a link on our website on the different scams, so just be aware of them, okay? Let me switch quickly here because we'll stay and answer your questions. Valerie, you want to explain how we're going to do this?
Sure, yeah, I'll just read the questions off the Q&A section and then we can answer them.
Sounds good.
So the first question is, do we need a special permission letter from Bechtel if we are arriving after the I-20 start date of January 11th?
We won't write you a letter. Here's why. Because you're expected to come in by January 11th. That's what the Immigration Service expects you to enter no earlier than 30 days from January 11th. If you enter after that date, that's your risk to take. Do I think you'll be denied entry? Probably not. But the International Center is not going to write a letter saying it's okay for you to enter later, because it's up to the immigration officer at the port of entry to make that determination whether you can enter or not. So ideally, you entering, you know, by this Monday. But I know some of you are going to arrive later. A week later, you're probably going to be okay, but you better have a good reason why you're arriving late, you know, because the I-20 says January 11th, you're expected to be here to go to school. So why are you arriving late? Well, a good reason would be because you got the visa late and then you weren't able to get an airplane, you know, seat scheduled because everything got late. So just be honest. Always be honest at the port of entry, by the way. All right?
But the big unknown, though, is we don't know if she planned to come on the 15th of January, the 20th of January, the 1st of February.
No, if you're telling me I'm going to come in February, I'm saying, no, you're not. You better be here, because remember, we got to activate your record. You need to be in the U.S.
So you have to be here by January 22nd. If you are not here by January 22nd, then we cannot activate your record and you cannot come in. So
that is the drop deadline. I mean, and that's pushing it, okay? Now, here's us at Stanford saying, okay, January 22nd, but immigration is thinking January 11th. They could be thinking, if you got a super conservative officer, they're saying, well, why are you entering on January 13th? Oh, I got this was the earliest flight I could take. Okay, good answer. It has to be, you're not lying. You're saying truthful answers, okay? But from our perspective, we've got this pressure on us, on the office, to register thousands of students in the system. And so we're just flat out telling you, if you're not coming by January 22nd, then you got to let us know. And we're going to make a new I-20 for you with March 29th start date, which is the start date for spring quarter. All right? Hopefully that doesn't happen. All right? Next question, please.
We have a few questions about what is considered a hybrid course and how to find that in like Simple Enroll. I can answer this question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have heard from students saying, I look up in Simple Enroll for my department, or for if I'm an undergrad, I look up undergrad courses, and there are no hybrid courses. What do I do? In this case, if you're a graduate student and you cannot find a hybrid, what's considered a hybrid course in Simple Enroll to take, you need to contact your department and tell them, and let them know you're an international student and that it's a requirement. We have talked to all departments and undergrad admissions, or the registrar, undergrad registrar who knows about this. So they know you have to take this hybrid course. So if you're a graduate student, contact your department, let them know, and they will let you know what hybrid course you can take. If you're an undergrad, contact UAR, and they can tell you what undergrad course to take.
Yeah, very, very important. And right now, conservatively, you're going to be enrolling in hybrid course winter and spring quarters, right? And then we're going to learn later, hopefully during spring, what happens for the future. Is the pandemic going to be gone? No way. This is going to be here for a while. So will the Immigration Service be flexible with this? We hope so. There's been a pattern of it, but time will tell. So we'll be advising you as time continues. We have these sessions, information sessions, but just be aware, you got to do this for winter and spring quarters for sure. We'll know more later about any quarters beyond spring quarter. All right.
And
but go ahead.
Sorry. We have some students asking about how their enrollment hold can be removed. Most students' enrollment hold was removed already. If your enrollment hold wasn't removed, please.
Well, it's maybe, you know what, Valerie? Maybe it's someone who took a leave of absence for a year or some time, and then we placed a hold, and now they're coming back. Mm-hmm. You physically have to be in the U.S. Ideally for us to release that hold, because we don't want to register you in the system and you're not in the U.S. That's a big no-no. That's a huge mistake for our office to make. We don't make that mistake, by the way. Okay, so you want to add more to that, Valerie? Or
yeah, so if you still have the enrollment hold, email international students with a copy of your I-94 record showing that you've entered the U.S. So all of you should have gotten an email talking about having the enrollment hold and having to enter what happens when you enter the U.S. And we sent a link in that email to what's called the Winter Bechtel Check-in. It's a Qualtrics form. And once you're in the U.S., you have to fill out this form, and it'll ask for a copy of your I-94 record. So that's that record showing that you came into the U.S. on F1 or J1 status. You have to fill this out before January 22nd in order for us to activate your record. If you don't fill this out if you're not in the US and haven't filled this out by January 22nd, you are in big, big trouble. So just do it. Just fill it out by January 22nd with a copy of your I-94 record. Don't forget that.
Yep. Thank you. All right. What other question?
We have a question. I am going to be an RA starting next week, but I don't have an SSN. Can I get an SSN now?
Well, you will qualify because you have a research assistantship. You will qualify for an SSN. Our office has to validate your record in the system, but normally that doesn't happen for a few weeks. You can make an appointment, right? You can go on our website, look at the information. You're going to have to make an appointment with the local Social Security Administration office. And then our office is going to have to write a letter for you. And then, Sean, remember this is what you were talking about?
Yeah. So basically, the person didn't say if they're a brand new student or not.
I'm assuming they are.
They are. Then
I'm assuming they're a PhD student too, by the way.
And they can tell their local employer that they cannot apply for their Social Security number until the earliest would be February 11th at the earliest. And they cannot get a letter from us either until February 11th probably, because we need to activate their record. So if they were continuing students, their F1 started at least 3 months ago, then they would have no problem in applying for their number this week or next week. But the fact is that they're so new in the country, the various databases that even the Social Security Administration rely on have to be updated with their activation, the fact that they've only officially arrived within the US. And that in lies the actual delay itself.
Yeah, let your department know that. I mean, just let them know that that, I mean, eventually you will get, if you let them know that you're applying for a social security number, I think they like to hear that too. And sometimes when you do make an appointment and you've applied, physically applied, you get a receipt of the case, pending number case, you know.
There's
Not,
also a slight chance the person might be a J1 student, and therefore on-campus employment is a bit more complicated because we have to authorize in advance of their start date for their on-campus employment. The fact we have to update their CVIS record with that information as well.
right, they have to play for an on-campus
Question.
employment. But I'm going to assume, Sean, that this is an F1 student, PhD, doing a research assistantship, and you'll have to talk to the department. The department then deals with payroll about your case, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
But go look specifically at the SSN information on our website. Very, very important for you to go, and my guess is that you're going to be able to make an appointment in a few weeks. So it's a timing. It's a little difficult question to deal with, but hopefully in February sometime there, we've already activated your record. Okay.
Yeah.
All
You
righty.
can probably go ahead and try to make an appointment with the Social Security Administration, but try to have the date no like earlier than February 11th, because by then you will have a letter from your on-campus employer. You'll probably have a letter from us as well. You'll
Yep.
have your I-20 printed out and signed by yourself, and you'll have all the other, maybe your I-94 will be printed out as well, and therefore you'll be able to rock and roll, handing in your application, and then within a week or two after that, you might get your number from them then.
When my colleague said rock and roll, what he means is
Oh,
you're ready to go. Okay, that's an expression, American
I'm from the
expression.
70s.
Not that you're going to go out and dance or okay.
Yeah,
All right.
the
All right.
1870s.
What's the next question?
Next question, is a fellowship considered employment?
That's a very good question. We would have to look at your letter to see how it's worded. But generally, the quick answer is no. It's not employment based. It's here's the money. We like you. Go and study. We want to give you the fellowship so you don't have to work, so you can focus on your studies. So generally speaking, the quick answer is no. But the departments write these interesting letters. I'm not sure if you want to talk about that, Valerie, but where, you know, where they make it sound like you're working. It just depends on the style of letter that you got. That if the letters talks about employment, then the quick answer would be yes. But we would have to look at that letter, right?
Yeah. Also, if you're planning to base it on a fellowship where there's some mention of future employment opportunities, the Social Security Administration, we may write a letter for you to support that, but we can't guarantee that they will approve your request. It might be 50-50 based on the...
Yeah, because they're going to say, when are you going to work? Are you working within the next 30 days? The answer is no. They're not going to issue the Social Security number.
But it is
Yeah,
50-50.
I mean, typically, if your fellowship states that you're doing an assistantship in year 3 or year 4 or something like that, then you can just get an I-10 for now because you're not technically working, and then 2 years from now when you start working, you can apply for the SSN.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, next question: is independent study instruction mode considered a hybrid course?
Very good question. We are not the academic side of Stanford University. So you need to ask your department if there's the component to that independent course that requires you to do something in person, or that side of it that's not only distance learning. So maybe you meet, I don't know, 2-3 times a quarter to do something, and under the guidance of a professor or research assistant or something. I don't know. The Immigration Service didn't give us clear guidance. But the academic side questions, we always say, go talk to your department. But if you're saying, would an independent 199 or 299 level course, would it qualify if it had that hybrid component of not just wholly being distance learning, but having that hybrid component of having to attend something physically? I would say yes to that. Anybody want to add anything else, or that's just pretty much the way it is?
I think just ask, if you're a graduate student, ask your department. If you're an undergrad, ask UAR. They
Yep.
really are the people that make the decision, not us.
Yep, exactly.
Next question. We had a few questions about students saying, have you received my email? When will you answer my email? We were on a break for, 3 weeks over winter break, so we're still catching up on emails. We're already caught up to about this Sunday, I believe. So if you send an email this week, you just have to wait, probably till next week for our answer. You just have to give us time. 3 or 4 days
Yep.
typically to answer an email. Like I said, we're a little
Yep.
backed up because of winter break. So you just have to be patient. Give us time. Next
Yeah.
question.
Everything. Yeah, that's a good point. Everything gets done. And we have 3 advisors doing email, by the way. And your questions aren't yes or no questions, and so be patient with us, and we'll get to it.
We probably need to mention at this point that if you sent an email, just say 2 days ago, and we
Yeah.
haven't responded yet, but then if you send a response to that email again,
Yeah.
it's now taken out of sequence. So instead of being a 2-day-old email that we're eventually going to get to, it's now a brand new email that we won't get to for you.
Yeah, it takes you out of the queue. So don't do that. Don't send us repeated emails. And please don't email everybody. If you email everybody, I will remember you. Okay. Don't do that. Just we all have a lot of work. Our plates are very, very full, and just be patient. We're gonna answer your questions, but don't send another email, because, like Sean said, it'll switch you out of the queue and it further delay our response to you. All right. What other question do we have?
And another thing to remember, when you send us emails, always include your Stanford ID number. Otherwise, we can't look you up because we have a lot of students with the exact same name. So it's just going to
Exactly.
delay it even further if you don't give us if we have to ask you for your ID number.
Yeah, I mean, it's routine. We asked you earlier on the slides. I said, provide always your student ID number, the 06 number, and the CVIS number, the N00, because we can then go look at you in different databases and piece the puzzle together to see what are you asking us and what's your background. All right.
Okay, next question. I'm in the class of 2024, so I'm graduating in 2024, but my visa expires in 2021. What is the process of extending it?
You can only extend. Remember earlier I said that your visa stamp can expire while you're in the US. So your I-20 expires in 2024. Your visa expires in 2021. That's not a problem as long as you're not traveling. But if you leave the country, you need to go back home. Ideally, you go to your home country, go to the US Embassy or Consulate after you've made an appointment, and ask for a brand new visa and the passport. And if they gave it to you for 1 year, they're going to give another one for another year. Okay. Like I said earlier, I believe citizens of Brazil and Mexico, I believe you get visas for 4 years. Certain fields might get a visa only for 1 year. Let's say Chinese national in aeronautics and astronautics. Your high probability you're only going to get a visa for 1 year, because the U.S. government wants to know what you're doing. Okay, and so instead of a Chinese national getting 5 years, which is not uncommon, if you're in a very specific field that the Immigration Service wants to keep a closer eye on, like aeroastro, they might give you one for a year, unless your country already has that agreement that for 1 year period, that's it. Anybody coming from that country only gets 1 year. All right, and that's the way it is. But like I said, you can remain in the country with an expired visa as long as you don't travel. All right.
However, we would normally like to point out to people that if you previously applied for a visa with the US Embassy, maybe an F1, and it took you 6 months to get it or 3 months, it went to administrative processing. That's not normal processing. The sad part is, even though they eventually approved it for you, but it took so many months, the next time you go home to apply for another visa, you can expect to spend the same amount of time at home waiting while they process your request.
Yeah, and that's, Sean, and you know that we don't know how long that administrative processing could take. Not everybody gets this administrative processing. But if you do, that means that another entity is reviewing your request. What entity? There's at least 20 entities, but most likely it's the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, who's doing a background check on you before they tell the embassy to say, yeah, go ahead and give them the visa. And how long can that take? Months. The embassy sends this generic email that says it could take 2 to 8 weeks. It's not going to take 8 weeks. I'm thinking many months. The worst case scenario I've ever seen was 11 months. Yeah. That's scary. Okay, but I would say the bulk probably processed in about 3 months or so.
Yeah.
If you get administrative processing, there's no expedite for this, by the way. You can't. If you're saying, oh, I got to go back, I've got physics experiments to continue, I got to get back, you're stuck. So what happens is students don't travel. Now, if you have a family member that's sick, yeah, you're going to end up leaving. You're going to go. So then just deal with the consequences if you have to renew the visa in that scenario, and be aware that you could be delayed getting back in. But that's just part of dealing with it.
Yeah, and also if you're in your final year of your studies, maybe a PhD, and you need to be in the United States in F1 status in order to apply for OPT, and you're planning
Yep.
to go home for spring break, you're graduating in June, that's a perilous time to apply for a visa for you,
Yeah.
because
So the
if
scenario he's creating is you're graduating in June, you take off in spring break in third week of March or whatever to go home, eat some good food, and get a visa. You might not get back in time to graduate. And then what Sean is getting to is that if we have to terminate your record because you can't come back and stay enrolled, then you mess up your F1 OPT, the 12 months or 3 years worth of OPT. So be very careful about those types of things. Don't worry about it right now because you're here in the US, or you're going to be here. This is not going to be an issue right now, but it's an issue for the future. And we'll have plenty of workshops on this stuff, okay? Don't worry about it. You'll be able to talk to somebody about this, okay? I mean, we don't see you being denied a visa, by the way. Although we don't have a crystal ball that tells us the future, you usually will get the visa unless you said something stupid at the time of the interview that said, I love America, I want to stay in the US forever. They'll deny you the visa because you're supposed to be here only temporarily. Remember F1DS, temporary status? That's what you're supposed to be here for. If you start sounding like you want to be here permanently, you will not get the visa renewed. But you're not going to say anything like that.
or if you've
Anyway.
been to some illegal activity which is not federally permitted, that can also delay
Yep.
or deny your
Oh,
visa.
by the way, I just thought of something. When you go, if you've smoked marijuana, and at the time of the visa application or the interview, you said that you've smoked marijuana because you're being honest, you could be denied the visa to come back into the United States. All right. So, and in the same breath, I'm going to tell you, you always have to answer honestly. I'm not going to tell you to lie. No way. So be very careful what you do while you're in the US because it might affect you when you're applying for a visa in the future. Okay. So what else? What else?
Next question, what happens to my F1 status or / OPT if I take a medical leave for a term or two?
You don't take a well, it's very rare for a student to take a medical leave during OPT after graduation.
No, I think they mean what happens, can I still apply for OPT if I take a medical
I
leave?
see. Yes, but you have to document the medical leave. The Immigration Service allows us up to 12 months cumulative of medical-based leaves from school and allows us to keep your F1 CBIS record active. Okay? So the answer is, if you have a medical leave for 1 quarter, and then you come back after the medical leave and you graduate that say spring quarter, do you qualify for OPT? Yes. We go through the Office of Accessible Education to document this medical issue. And because we're not medical doctors, and we rely on the OAE, Office of Accessible Education, to provide their blessing on this request. And then we approve it. We go into the CFS database saying the student is partially enrolled or not enrolled at all. And like I told you, the law allows us to do this up to cumulatively 12 months. I've never had a student do 12 months. 1 or 2 quarters, yeah, not a problem. Or even longer if need be, depending how ill you are. Okay, what questions do we have?
If I can answer this one, I'm only planning on entering campus in spring. How may I request for a new I-20? Just email internationalstudents@stanford.edu. Make sure you include your Stanford ID number and CVIS ID number, and we can get it all situated out. Please do that as soon as possible, by the way.
Yeah, wasn't there though a Qualtrics that was sent out asking the students, hey, tell us about this? Because if you have a January 11th start date, we need to change that start date to March 29th. But I thought,
There was. At this point, if you didn't fill it out, just send an email to international students.
all right,
So more on our radar.
all righty.
Another question. My parents are coming with me to Palo Alto and require a COVID-19 test to depart from California and return home. Can Stanford help with this since their parents of an international student?
Good question.
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think, Stanford's pretty swamped with employee and student tests, you can contact the Vaden Health Center to see if they can help. But honestly, I don't know how much help they'll be able to give.
The other thing is the pharmacies, the local farm like Rite Aid and what is it, CVS or
Yeah, Walgreens and CVS.
CVS. I've had a test done, couple of tests done through CVS. Okay, and you set up an appointment and you go, you
But
know,
if
and
they're
then they tell you the results, and I got my results in 4 days. They said 3 to 5 days. It was actually closer to 5, but you know.
But isn't there different type of COVID tests? So sometimes for leaving the country, for satisfy the embassy or the entry requirements for like another country, they might require it's called a PCR test or a blood test or they might. So the different
Yeah,
type of COVID
right.
tests
And
out there,
so,
you might need to find out what type of test you need
right.
for your
By the
parent.
way, Sean, I'm not sure, or someone can find the link to the COVID, the Stanford COVID website. It probably has that question answered in there, but but
Like,
just know that you can make an appointment for a test with some of these pharmacies. And what you do is you drive up. You literally, at least the way I did it, they have you drive through a window of an area, and this person talks to you through this glass partition, and they give you the packet with all the material, and then you swab yourself for 15 seconds on each nostril, and then you stick the little swab back into the container, and then they give you a wipe to wipe the thing that you open up to put the tube in, the test tube and all that stuff in, and then you clean yourself, and that's it. And then 3 or 4 days later, or whatever, they'll tell you, they'll give you the results. So good question. But did you see or find that COVID section?
What they might want to do is go to the embassy of their home country if they're planning to go back to their home country after their temporary visit here to find out if there's recommended resources or places for people to go to get these various tests that only they will accept. The other thing is you might want to, because it's America and COVID test is a type of medical health care, you might want to find out if it's covered by your travel insurance, your home country, or if you have to pay out of pocket and then because you're not even a resident of the state of California as a
Right,
tourist.
right.
Those can be something that you might want to find out in advance. Possibly even
Yeah,
if a Costco membership, maybe they do COVID testing through their pharmacy. I don't know, but there might be some discounted way of getting it done as well, especially
yeah.
for parents because it could be quite expensive.
Yeah, I would caution people to have the test done and having a state government or federal government pay for it, because that could complicate things later.
Yeah.
Because it appears that you took advantage of the social welfare system. But I'm just being very conservative in saying that right now. But yeah, I would say call CVS. Uh, Valerie, you mentioned Walgreens, or I'm sorry,
Yes, Walgreens. I know
Walgreens.
Walgreens does tests as well.
I believe that Priya
Um,
found it in like the chat, the actual link itself.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Priya,
All right.
if you want to check the chat and the student that's asking this question, Priya put the COVID-19 website for Stanford. That
Yeah.
might be able to help.
Yeah, and follow up. See if there's another contact there. Follow up with them. They'd be, I think, more knowledgeable than. I mean, I
And
can tell
also
you
checking
my
with the
process,
embassy of the
but
country they're planning to go to after their visit to actually California to
yeah,
see that what they plan to pay for out of pocket and get done will actually satisfy the actual requirement, because there might be a certain window that might have to have a negative test within so many days or hours of actually boarding the flight as well.
yeah. I don't feel comfortable going more into this question.
Yeah.
I think we need to guide the student to that link, and then from there they can follow up.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think that is all our questions.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. I want you to be safe. You know, I want you to be patient and be resilient. Especially, you got to be safe. And if you have any questions regarding your visa status, anything like that, we look forward. You have no idea how we're looking forward for the International Center to physically open up, and so we can chat. Face to face. Eventually, one of these days, months, that'll happen. And we're very fortunate to have a very large building. Priya's our manager of the building, and she's extremely familiar with it. It's a great place. We have a lot of activities, always a lot of activities. And if you have any of you who are married or have spouse or partner, there's a spouse partner a link on our website of different activities that are even being done through Zoom sessions. So we welcome you. We're very happy that that you're arriving here now at Stanford, and the things will settle down. And again, we look forward to meeting you in person, and take care. All right.
Bye.
So, all right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.